everybody, and welcome to this leadership episode of 30 Minutes to President's Club. My name is Armand Farouk, and I'm here with my co-host today, the one and only Gelski. We have the one and only John Sherer as our guest. He is currently the COO at Growth Assistant, and before that, he was a super rising star over at Lattice, making VP of Sales at a super young age, overseeing a team of 50 plus, and oh man, this is a hot one. Nick, why should people listen?
So John is an extremely practical sales leader, and in this episode, he shatters a lot of misconceptions that exist about running a sales org. Example, he thinks you should have a discount on every single deal to drive that deal. He talks about when he's running a sales org with 50 AEs, he's literally having a one-on-one with every single one of them. And he does it for a reason, and he does it in a very rhythmic way, which he'll talk about. So if you are interested in seeing best practice meet reality in this episode, you have a lot to learn from John.
And a 3, 2, 1, it's time to squeeze in some advertisements. Alrighty, John, welcome to the show. We start every show with your top 3 actionable takeaways. Let's get your 3.
All right. Number 1, the pipe squeeze. So for me, forecasting has 2 purposes, predicting and squeezing. We'll skip predictability. Let's talk about the pipe squeeze. So every 2 weeks, myself or the frontline manager, we spend 45 minutes with every rep walking through each of their deals. I have them bring all of their deals. I bring up my Gmail window. We go through each of them and I ask 5 questions. How big is the deal? When are they going to buy? Is the prospect aware of that close date? What's the next step? And what's the incentive or discount? I type this out manually on the shared screen and I highlight red, yellow, green based on its quality. Then we forecast. Lastly, and hugely importantly, I then email this pipe squeeze to the CEO, to the CRO, to their peers, to the sales management team. And this is what makes the pipe squeeze a serious activity: transparency and accountability.
Boom. What's number 2?
All right. Number 2 is go absolutely ham on skip levels. So in my last role, I was a third line sales leader. So basically I had 3 directors, 8 or 9 sales managers, and about 50 reps under me. Every month, I did one-on-ones with the managers. Every week, I did one-on-ones with the directors. That's pretty normal. But what was the hack for me was that every quarter, I spent 30 minutes with every single rep. Why? Information. My job is to make decisions. And to make decisions, you need good information. I believe my primary job as a revenue leader is to make good decisions and undo bad decisions quickly. And a lot of times in these bigger organizations, what you're going to find is Jason, the rep, is going to give Carol, the manager, feedback. Carol, the manager, is going to give Betty, the director, that feedback. And by the time it gets to me, it's filtered. Everyone's inherently biased, which is totally normal and okay. But as a sales leader who's making information-based decisions, it's a pretty terrifying concept. And so by meeting with every single rep every quarter, I'm getting information firsthand. But I'm also opening the door for real-time information to come to me. You just did a big resegmentation? Cool. You want Anthony to tell you how it actually went, what the reps are talking about? They need to trust you. That information needs to flow to you directly so that you can make decisions going forward. And the way to do that is getting really aggressive and consistent with your skip levels.
Amazing. Bring us home. What's number 3?
Number 3, career pathing. I call it micro career pathing. So I have the belief that top reps are more motivated by career growth than they are by short-term compensation. And so if you believe that, career pathing ends up being your best lever to drive behaviors. In every organization, we want reps to hit goal, but there's usually something else that we care about, some behavior we really need to change. When I was at HubSpot, it was NDR. When I was at Lattice, I joined, we were 8% outbound revenue, and we knew over a few years we needed to get to 50%. How did we do that? We built in outbound to career pathing. So basically, you could hit 100% for the forever at Lattice, but if you didn't outbound, you could never get promoted. And so what we would do is we would break down SMB, which we called commercial, into 4 career pathing levels: junior commercial, commercial, and even senior commercial or principal commercial if you didn't want to go to mid-market. But the only way to get that career growth was from outbounding. And we went from 8% to 50% over those 2.5 years. It was a super successful program, and everybody learned to outbound. It was a cultural norm.
So, John, one of the things you were telling us in the pre-show is we were talking about this pipeline squeeze. I want to talk about this quite a bit. And you have a very, very intentional reason that those are the 5 questions that you ask. How big is the deal? When are they going to buy? Are they aware of that date? What's the next step? And what's the incentive? And those aren't like your traditional like medic or medpic fields that you might be talking about in one of these pipe reviews. Talk to me about the reason for those 5 questions.
Yeah, I think SMB mid-market sales is a velocity game. And so it's all about speed. And I want reps to close deals really fast. And so the way to do that is to pick a close date with the buyer and give them a reason to buy on that close date and hold them accountable to it. I'm a huge believer in discounting. I want every single deal to have a discount on it. I think the reality is for most of us out here, the world isn't going to end if somebody doesn't buy by a certain timeline. It's a very idealistic thing. Oh, we need a real reason for this date, right? It's like, no, give them a discount that expires on that date and drive the deal to close. And then you can move on to the next deal and get that brain space back. And that's the game that I play.
I have one more follow-up question, which is like, how do you explain these? You've got a new rep or a new manager joining your team, and you want them to start doing these things. How do you explain the pipeline squeeze to them? And what do you teach them up front about what goes into that meeting?
I teach them almost nothing up front. I bring them into the meeting, I put their deals on a list, and I start asking them questions. And I say, hey, when's this deal going to close? And they're like, probably the end of the month. And you're like, is the prospect aware of that date? And they're like, no. Boom. Do you understand what I'm saying now? They're like, yes, okay. I will ask the prospect if they actually can buy on that date. But why would they buy on that date? It's like, do you have a discount on that date? No. It's what's a good deal to offer them? Bring up deal desk. And listen, this isn't the sexiest, most thoughtful sales talk you're ever going to hear, but I think this is the reality. And at the orgs I've been a part of, which have grown rapidly and really successfully, like this is the base of the playbook.
There are a lot of people in the audience right now who are probably cringing at the idea of discounting every deal. But I would ask yourself in a market like today, go look at every deal you've won and ask yourself, how many of those deals had 0 discounts on them? And the reality is most companies are discounting most deals. I was doing velocity sales at Carta as well, and my entire team was selling $3,000 to $5,000 deals. And everyone was going to get a 20% discount if they just asked their law firm to refer them. And I knew any smart founder was going to do that. And so I'm like, if they're going to do that anyways, I'd rather have them do it on my speed and my terms. But John, I imagine that you have some reps who are like, I think this one's going to close, or I think this one's going to come in without a discount. Let's say you see a deal that has no incentive on it. How do you get your rep to slap a discount on it? My guess is it's not just a cold email saying, hey, 20% off today.
Totally. It's a good question. And there is some nuance here, right? Like if you've been on my team for 12 months and you're performing and you're like, nope, I'm not discounting this deal. Sure. Great. I trust you. Do your job. I'm not going to beat you up about it. But if we're sitting here with a timeline that the prospect isn't aware of and there's no next step on the calendar and you need a reason to reach out to them, well, guess what? Everyone likes a deal. Let's get them on the phone. Let's get this thing moving. Time kills all deals. There's priorities that come in left and right. You don't get this deal closed tomorrow. It could be like perfectly boxed up. But guess what? Like their boss leaves the company and they go into a panic for a month. You lost the deal, right? I don't want to play that game. And so in order to avoid that risk, I would literally have the rep send an email saying, hey, my boss noticed your account, thought you'd be a great fit, wanted to know if you'd talk about pricing incentives with us. Get them on the phone, confirm that they can actually buy on the timeline, offer the deal, lock it in, move on.
My question or concern even would be, if I am a rep and I have an early stage deal, or even if I'm a leader and I'm poking a new rep's pipeline and I get the sense that it's not price that's going to get this deal done. There are other issues. How do you suss out if giving them an incentive is going to actually get the deal done, or if you're just going to give a discount and now the deal is not going to close on time and it's discounted?
It's a great question. So when I'm doing the pipe squeeze, I'm asking they're filling me in on context on the deal. What's the next step? It's not just when is the next step, it's what's the next step. And that is actually what typically reveals what's going on in the deal. Well, the next step is I'm meeting with the champion on Tuesday because they're talking to legal and procurement over here, and their boss looked at a competitor last week. If I hear those things, I'm going to pause on giving the discount because that deal isn't late stage. We're not in a closing motion for that deal yet. And so what we're going to do there is we're going to discuss the next step. We're going to walk through that and then design our cadence on what's going to get us to a conversation that we're happy about. But if we get them on the phone and they tell us, hey, yeah, we'd really like to work with you, then I want a discount on the deal.
Talk to me about the other elements of the pipeline squeeze. So you have these 5 questions, and then you mentioned that you're going to highlight the next step based on its quality, red, yellow, or green. How do you determine the quality of the next step?
Green is the next step is on the calendar. I don't even care if you have a payment link out. If there's not a next step on the calendar, it's not green. There needs to be a calendar event out there. Red, you're chasing. Orange is they're reviewing the legal contract. They said they get back to me by Tuesday afternoon. I can see the email thread. It does say they'll get back to me by Tuesday afternoon with the calls and on the calendar. It's orange.
What do you do when you see a bunch of orange on the calendar, aka contract is out waiting for red lines? They said they were going to get back to me. How do you act on those deals?
So typically what I do is I make them come up with a cadence of today I will call them at 3. If they do not answer, I will email them at 4. If they do not answer that, I will multi-thread in here. And I make them type all, or I'm typing that out. I walk them through it. And now everybody in the leadership team sees the accountability on that deal. And guess what? It all happens.
I'm kind of interested in this philosophy of, so you're on the pipe review with your rep, right? You're both on a Zoom and you can see each other's faces and you go, hold on, let me share my screen. And you're literally pulling up your Gmail and you are live taking notes on the deal in an email. It sounds like. Why do you do that?
One, to me, it makes us feel like we're all on the same team. I love it. I love being the typer and asking the questions and talking with the reps about the deal. It's like camaraderie to me. Pipe squeezes, this is absolutely my favorite meeting of the week. Right now, I'm managing 2 reps directly, and literally the pipe squeeze, the highlight of every other week for me. They're 45 minutes. We rip through them. They're fun. I send the email out. The CEO asks questions on the email thread. They're like, oh, I know Dan at Athletic Greens. Let me send a note. It's actually great. Builds a lot of camaraderie. And I like the transparency and also being in that place of servant leadership. Like, I'm going to type this up for you. Like, I'm here to support you in this. We're on the same team.
Yeah, I feel like it also probably helps drive the conversation forward because you are the one being the scribe, and like you can be like, all right, we finished talking about this piece. Let's move to the next part. I'm actually going to steal this because I run our customer success function at 30 Minutes to President's Club, and I meet with one of my colleagues and we go through the health of every account, and it's very similar to a pipe review. And I'm going to start taking the screen share and going through and being like, nope, we're talking about this one now, and this is where we're talking here. I have a follow-up question, which is I might have misunderstood this email that you're sending out. I assumed that you were aggregating all 50 of your reps into one email that went out to CRO, CEO, etc. You're sending out an individual email to the entire company, including your CEO, for each individual rep. Is that correct?
So they're labeled April 29th, pipe squeeze, Brennan.
What do they say? What does the CEO or the CRO say when they get 30 emails from the 30 reps at Lattice?
Who doesn't love seeing that the deals are on? What's up with the deals? It's the best thing, right? I think everyone's a salesperson at heart. You got to get them looped into the sales process. Nothing but good stuff. Obviously, depends on your org size, right? When I was at Lattice, I didn't have the CEO on the pipe squeezes. It was going from rep to manager to director to VP and brought out to sales ops. Now I'm in a smaller company, and so it makes sense to like expand it all the way to CEO, et cetera. So there's a little judgment in there, but I try to maximize the transparency.
How did this work when you were a VP? Were all of your managers doing individual pipe squeezes and then you were the recipient of 50 different emails?
It's great. And then I can reply to the email and be like, sick pipeline, Max, like dope. And then it's like a positive culture thing.
So other than sick pipeline, Max, dope, what are the other things that you would do when you would get those 50 different emails?
You want me to list out the different emojis that I use?
Yeah.
No, like you'll see, ooh, this is not good. Right. And then I'm probably going to ping the manager or the director and be like, yo, what's up with Carol? What's going on here? This is like 2 in a row. And it's also a great little data point, right? We can all go into Clary or Gong, whatever, and see our forecast and our pipeline. We all do that exercise upwards, right? But this is like constant inflow of information. And like I said before, the skip levels, I'm just trying to accumulate information and trust that I'm filtering and gathering it and sorting it in a way that's going to help me make decisions.
One other thing on this. It reminded me of, oh, that's 2 weeks in a row. I oftentimes had a hard time tracking the changes in the pipeline. In other words, there was a deal that went backwards or a deal that got closed loss and all of a sudden it's gone from the list. Are you tracking closed loss deals inside of the pipe squeeze, or how do you keep track of the deals that are disappearing or things that where the next step didn't happen?
If I wanna go through them, like next steps are an issue, right? This was a thing at Lattice for a while. We had a cohort of reps that we thought were using next steps well and were closing better, and a few that weren't. And so we did an analysis on it, and we figured out, yeah, it's super right. So we did a improved next steps training. For me, it's the motion of this, the consistency of the operating rhythm, the conversation topic, the coming together to talk about the deals that drives the biggest impact. And it's too hard to manage perfect follow-up in all these different places. And so I kind of let it be, but the information's there. So I have a guy on my team, his name's Oscar. He logs every pipe squeeze in an Excel sheet. So if I want to go back and look at it, I can see everything. I can pull the data on it, but I probably do it less than once a quarter, and only if I'm like, something's wrong.
The last step of the pipeline squeeze is you have the 5 questions, you have the quality of the next step, and then you're forecasting off this pipe squeeze. How do you forecast off of these hundreds of deals that are coming your way?
Depends on the size of the org. So right now I've got 4 sellers, right? I'm literally looking at their pipe squeeze emails, adding them up, doing the math in my head. Then I send my own email that is not on them that helps me do my forecast. So I do it separately. So a little bit of a different game. When we were at Lattice, right, you have so much more data to play with on forecasting, and especially in our SMB and mid-market teams, the way that we're forecasting is, I always would say, I'm doing my job to the best of my ability when I don't know the name of one deal. Because I know how much pipeline was added this month, how much new pipeline we're going to create this month, what the close rate on that new pipeline is, what the close rate on the pull-in pipeline is. And we were within 10% accuracy quarter over quarter for my entire tenure. I didn't even know the name of deals, which is an SMB mid-market thing, right? It's a sub 100K deal, but it's different depending on org size.
There are a couple of really interesting things that you mentioned. Let's start with the small org where you can see every deal. You mentioned that you're forecasting. Your reps are not forecasting.
They're forecasting in the pipe squeeze email, but then I take that info and I reforecast it up. An example of why I do that. I am not going to hold the rep accountable for what leads have not come in yet this month that are going to come in. I know that I'm going to close 20% of my revenue from a deal that hasn't even shown up in their pipeline yet when I do that first pipe squeeze. I am not holding them accountable to marketing pipeline because it's the marketing pipeline that turns fast, not the outbound pipeline. And so I take that up where I can do the math and I can say, no, I know we're going to find 6 more deals. And so to me, those are different exercises.
So this I struggled with a lot at Pave because we had different segments. Some were transactional, create and close inside of month. Others were longer ones. So what you're having your reps do is you're having them each close their in pipeline deals or forecast their in pipeline deals. So if a rep has 10 deals, you're not forecasting what could come in. You're only forecasting those 10 deals. And then you're applying an increase on that based on what you know mathematically could come in for the rest of the month or the quarter. Can you talk to me? Let's say it's the halfway point of the month. How do you figure out what's left to come in out of vapor in the next 15 days?
I mean, one, it's you look at historical data, right? So how many new first meetings am I going to get on my reps' calendars in those 14 days? And then you have to look at the cohort of the value of a meeting. So if I have one meeting or I have 100 meetings, how many of them are going to close in the first 14 days? How many of them are going to close in the first 30 days? How many 60, 90, whatever? And they probably asymptotes out to 120 days or something like that in transactional world. And so literally I'm just taking that number and I am chopping it at 14 days. And I'm saying mathematically, I think I'm going to do 72 meetings and I'm going to get 9% of that revenue from that. So I'm going to get 9% total of that number. So you basically take meetings, multiply by close rate, multiply by the percentage of the revenue you get out in that time period. And the interesting thing is it's scary accurate. It's just in my whole career, that's worked. Things are pretty consistent.
I want to ask you a bit about your current situation. You've got 4 reps. You're communicating this forecast up to your CEO, I presume. And I'm wondering, when you send that email or when you have that meeting with your CEO, what information are you looking to communicate with them? And then are there things you're hoping to understand back from your leadership about how they're receiving the information or how they're planning on growing other parts of the org, like the cross-functional element piece of it. What goes into the comms that go up?
One, I just want them to know what's going on. I don't want them to have to ask me, how are we going to do this month? I think just being a pro, that's part of the game, right? I want to educate you before you have to ask me questions. I want you to trust me that I know what's going on and that I can forecast successfully. Specifically, there are two founders of the business that I'm in now, and they both are very well-networked people. And we get a lot of leads through their social channels indirectly. So they're not necessarily introductions, but the social channels drive a lot of leads for us. And so that means that the likelihood that one of them knows one of the people at the companies that we're selling to is like 1 in 4, maybe higher. And so I want them to see the deals so they know who I'm selling to, so they can text their buddy Gary, who works at XYZ company. And that happens every pipe squeeze. Like, that's a constant motion for us. Additionally, Nick, like, what will happen is they'll get the information and be like, ooh, I have questions about that. And then, like, all of a sudden we're in our BizOps Slack channel, like ripping through why the data is this and what happened last week and why this marketing campaign did this. It triggers a lot of separate conversation that leaves that email thread.
All right. Last thing on forecasting, John. So you have reps forecasting the deals they have. You have a mathematical forecast of everything that's supposed to come in. Could you talk to me about how much of the forecasting are you doing in period this month versus future months? In other words, what's the cadence around this month, next quarter forecasting?
I put in a lot of these sales processes when I came into this business as a consultant earlier this year. And so you graduate, right? It's like, we did our first forecast meeting and then we started logging it. We did our first pipe squeezes and we started logging it. You're growing up over time. And one of those ways that you grow up is the distance in which you're forecasting out. And so this is a business with a sub 30-day close rate or a sales cycle. So it makes all the sense in the world to lock in on in-month. Now we've gotten pretty good at in-month. So the next place you graduate to is the quarter. And so we're just beginning to do that now. And with a 30-day sales cycle, right, you can play out that whole cohorted math thing. And you can literally say, we got this many meetings last week. This is what I think it's going to be like, et cetera. And that's going to drive off of meetings what you think is going to happen. So called up to 60 days out, maybe up to 90 days out, but not with a lot of confidence. And then you have to forecast marketing, which is the layer that gets complex in this environment. So we did a webinar earlier this month. We drove 900 attendees. Okay, I'm going to do another webinar next month. How many attendees and how can I drive? And can I get the attendee conversion up? If I get the attendee conversion up, how many meetings am I going to get in May? The webinar's on May 20th. And how's that going to impact the end of May and then June? And so that's where you end up going, right? You forecast your activities. And that's harder, but I don't like to spend too much time on it, candidly. I think it's a good exercise, but I think spending more than 40 minutes on getting that right I'd rather spend that 40 minutes trying to drum up more meetings.
So, John, let's zoom into the role of one of your managers at Lattice. You had almost 10 managers on their team. Every single one of them is doing these pipeline squeezes. They're reviewing the 30 deals, and you're in SMB sales. And so the reality is they can't be on all 30, 40, 50 deals for all of their reps. And so how much of your manager's time is spent in the pipeline squeeze and looking at all these deals versus doing other things like being in one-on-ones, being on calls, etc.
Pipe squeeze is obviously super important. One of my big beliefs here is I want people to do the job the way that they feel most comfortable doing the job within some set of guidelines. And the beauty is you've got 8 managers doing it slightly different ways. Like, you're going to learn a lot about what's going to work better in your organization. So I do want to provide a degree of freedom there. One thing that I'm a big believer in is pipe squeezes, deal reviews. They're not one-on-ones. The one-on-one is a separate meeting. It is the reps meeting. It is a growth meeting. It is a meeting to support the human being. It is not another forum to talk about deals. Talk about deals all day, right? But it's really important, in my belief, to hold space every single week. You do not cancel the one-on-one. And you hold space for that rep to bring up what's on their mind to you. We had one rep leave over 3 years at Lattice, one voluntary attrition. And I think this is a big part of it. You support the whole person. Another thing I'd say is, this might be a little controversial. I love when my managers are in and on deals. You want to rewrite emails, help somebody navigate that part of the process. You want to be on closing calls? Hell yeah, I love it. Obviously, if you've got 8 reps and they've got 30 deals, you can't be on all of them. But the most successful manager rep pairings I see are the ones where the rep brings the manager on all their big deals. I love it. Two heads are better than one. But I think it's a fantastic play, especially over the last few years. And as you go up to mid-market, which I also managed at Lattice, same thing, right? You got 8 deals. Get on the deals. Hell yeah. You got a great company that you're selling to. Get on the discovery call. Be there on the whole process. Obviously, don't like jump in and talk over the rep, but be a team. Plan together. Win these deals together. It's hard to win right now. No shame in co-selling top to bottom.
Yeah, the 3 or 4 activities that any manager has are, number 1, you work across deals. That's things like the pipeline squeeze. Number 2, you work in deals, and that's being on the calls. Number 3, you work directly with your reps, and those are the one-on-ones. And then number 4 is you're working with the team. And those are team trainings, bigger development activities. But even just the pipeline squeeze and the one-on-ones, if you have 8 reps on your team, that's 16 meetings in a week. That's a lot. And then you add customer calls on top of that. That's a lot too. Whatever sliver's left, you should probably, 1, have a little bit of breathing room to do some deep work so you can think about the best way to develop the whole team. But I love the way that you broke that down. John, this has been a freaking awesome episode. We have to move to the final question. We talked about a lot of good habits, admittedly controversial ones. It's time to talk about a bad one. So, what is one bad habit that every sales leader should break so that all teams out there get a little bit better?
Close Slack when you're in a meeting with another person. It's obnoxious to be slacking while you're in a meeting with somebody. It's not cool. We can see your fucking eyes. I can hear your typing. It's not cool. It's a bad practice. I've been called out for it in the past myself by one of my managers, and I'm really happy he did. And it was embarrassing, and I feel like I'm a better leader because of it. Stop slacking during your one-on-ones and calls with other people.
Could not agree more. Everyone, hang on for a 60-second recap coming up soon. Cheers. All right, Nick, it is time for a 2x2 recap. What do you got for your 2?
All right, so number 1, when you are in the pipeline squeeze, you should be the one scribing. Share your screen, open up your email, and you should be the one writing to help drive the meeting and show where you're going to get in the weeds and the details and where you can skim over things. This allows you to stay in control, and it also saves you time. You don't have to write this stuff from scratch when you get out of the meeting. Number 2 is discounts drive velocity. When you are reviewing a deal that you want to accelerate, first, you need to ask the questions to figure out, hey, is a discount even going to get this done? Because if it doesn't, you shouldn't just throw one over the fence. But if the answer to that is yes, meaning giving a discount could help speed this deal, then you should go and discount. Time is what kills most deals more than anything else.
Doubling down on the pipeline squeeze. You're going to ask the same 5 questions every time, rank the quality of their NEP red, yellow, green, forecast off the pipeline squeeze, and then send that email to the CEO for every single rep. And then lastly, number 4, for the forecasting portion, you should only have your reps forecast their deals that are in pipeline. And then for everything that could be created and closed within the month or the quarter, you figure out the mathematical equation for what could come out of thin air. Alrighty, Nick, how can people help us out here?
Armand, this was such an exciting interview. I was gripping my desk with anticipation and excitement. And so if you want to see me gripping my desk, believe it or not, 30 Minutes to President's Club is now on YouTube. So if you want to actually watch us interview the guest, it can sometimes be helpful because you can see body language, you can see people explain concepts, you can learn a lot from watching. Oh man, Armand is flexing right now. So if you want to see how much smaller Armand is than me, I'm trying. Check this one out on YouTube, and we'll see you next week on the 30 MPC Leadership Show.
You'll see the truth.